Grief Talk with Vonne Solis, The Clips.
I did want to ask you, only if you want to talk about it a little bit, because it kind of helps me and other bereaved moms out there. As a daughter and watching your mom lose your sister, do you have any wisdom and anything you want to share with other siblings that are dealing with that? I think there's quite a secrecy and silence around that. And one of my passions is to try and also help survivors, siblings of sibling death, understand it wasn't their fault. I think there's a tremendous need for surviving children, especially if it's an only child like I have, to feel responsible for the happiness of their parent who becomes such a changed individual. And, it really rocks the family. So obviously not speaking as a bereaved parent because you can't, but is there anything you want to just help? Well, I've got you here. Siblings and children of a bereaved parent, and just some words of advice that would go along the lines of guilt, regret, it's not their fault, and maybe they're trying to do too much for their parent. Like, how best could they support their mom or dad?
Such an interesting question. I really like that you've asked it, and I'll try and answer the best as I can. I think there's definitely survivor guilt, and it's difficult to watch the devastation of your mother. And being a mother myself, I have this fear of losing my own children, probably a hyper vigilant about their health and survival. And I remember when my son was born, I got the fear. I called it the fear about your children, and I took more notice of the news and the way the world was going. So there's empathy with my mother. As I said, I was a children's nurse who worked in sort of a highly traumatic speciality, and to see the impact on mothers and fathers of the death of the child is something that stays with you. And to have that personally, that I know as a professional and also as a daughter that will never leave her, and it will impact on our life for the rest of her life. And it has been difficult sometimes because my mother hasn't accessed the mental health help that she could have done. She has a strong faith system that is very, very helpful to her, but there are some things that in my medical opinion could have helped more. Sometimes that's frustrating to watch, and I think my advice would be see everything in the lens of a hurt person, and that you can't do anything that's going to make that less, apart from listen and have empathy for it. But like you said, you can't totally understand that, and to try not to take what can be what feels personally. Having said that, it's not, while that could be the reason for behaviors and stuff like that, it's not necessarily an excuse for it. So not to if there's any adverse behavior that has an impact on the relationship, not to take that on. And I'll say that quite frankly, that part of the journey has been not taking that on, is to, we all have our own grief story, and while that it's all understandable, it's not your responsibility to solve it. And I think as a nurse and as a daughter and as an eldest daughter, I have felt responsible for my mother's happiness. And I'm not responsible for my mother's happiness. She's responsible for her own happiness. And me resolving that in my mind has led to, me being at peace with it.